Hello and welcome to the 20th episode of the Commander's Contingencies podcast, where today we're going to be talking about an arcadekt waltz deck and a Phenax vanilla creatures mill deck. So the first thing that I want to cover is the Flash ban. Flash was banned in Commander. Clearly, I haven't been covering cards that were banned in other formats. So Flash, if you do not know, is 1 and a blue for an instant, and basically you can put a creature out into play, and if you don't pay its mana cost -2, it will get sacrificed. And the issue with this is it combos with Protean Hulk, which is taking over the CEDH meta. I fully support this ban, and I think that it is great. Overall, I think it is great. The one thing notable, two things. There's a couple other things. One, Rule 11 was updated to enable the companion mechanic, and Rule 3 was updated to further clarify companion. That just happens sometimes with new sets. That's fine. And the other thing is, there have been a lot of bans recently. Within the past year, it might even have been past 6 months, they banned Iona, they banned Flash, and they banned, I don't remember what the other card was, but they banned another card. Oh yes, Lutri, the Spell Chaser. So, personally, I support all of these bans except for Iona. Iona was perfectly fine and extremely expensive. And even though it might not be particularly fun to play against, it's simply a win con at that much mana. So, I disagree with the Iona ban, but otherwise I agree with those bans. I just think it's interesting how commonly they are now banning cards. I hope this isn't a new trend, but I think that they are just banning cards when they need to, which I support. Oh, the other card they banned was Paradox Engine, which I don't know if that needed to be banned or not. I think it would have been fine if it wasn't banned, but I do think the format is a little bit healthier if it doesn't exist. So I guess I support that, but if that entire banned and unbanned of Painter Servant release was canceled and never had happened, I wouldn't think there was really any issue. So that is that for Commander news. A new thing is, on my YouTube channel, I am now doing screen recording. So I think this will just make my content for YouTube a little bit better, so you can see what I am talking about. So basically, that's just going to make it so if you are watching on YouTube, you can see what I'm looking at, which basically you'll just be able to see the decks that I'm looking at. It's not going to be a huge change, and I'm still going to be looking at it with my intention. So I probably won't be like hovering on every single card for very long, but I will be a little bit more mindful, and you guys can see my screen now. So next up, we have the decks. So we have an arcadekt waltz deck and a Phenax mill deck. So I'm just going to start by covering the arcadekt waltz. So I'm going to start off with the Phenax mill deck. So Phenax, God of Deception, if you do not know, is 3 white, 3 blue, black for a 4/7 legendary enchantment creature god with indestructible. As long as your devotion to blue and black is less than 7, Phenax isn't a creature. And creatures you control have tap. Target player puts the top X cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard, where X is this creature's toughness. So basically, I am just trying to mill out my opponents using my creatures or other effects, but not necessarily as much. So this is split into really 3 categories. There's creatures with big toughness, which sometimes they're defenders, sometimes they're vanilla. There's actually a lot of vanilla creatures in here because I want to get them out of the way. And sometimes it just depends, really. So there's some high toughness creatures in here, and I don't think I'm going to read any of them except for, we use Merfolk Secret Keeper as an example. Merfolk Secret Keeper is blue for a 0/4 creature Merfolk Wizard, and it has an adventure for a blue. Target player puts the top 4 cards of their library into their graveyard, so it's just a 0/4. So for 1 mana, if you have Phenax out, it can tap to mill an opponent for 4 cards every single turn. So there's not really much to that category, it just kind of helps move the deck along. The next category is cards that synergize with the deck, but not directly. One example of that is Scheming Symmetry. Black for a sorcery. Choose 2 target players. Each of them searches their library for a card, then shuffles their library and puts that card on top of it. So you get to search for a card, and an opponent gets to search for a card. But because you have all of these mill effects, you can just tap one of your creatures and mill it into their graveyard. So no matter what they search for, they're not going to get that card. Sadly, they don't have to tell you, so if they know, and they probably will know, that it's going to be milled, you'll just have to mill it, and you might get unlucky if they have something like an anger or something similar to that. Then you might get unlucky, but usually it is a good way for you to tutor for 1 mana. Next up is Scaretiller. So that is 4 for a 1/4 artifact creature Scarecrow. Whenever Scaretiller becomes tapped, choose 1. You may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped, or return target land from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. So I don't have any fetch lands or anything that I could bring back over and over again, but it's just a way to get a small amount of value in addition to having that 4 toughness that can tap down. The final category, and I'm going through this quickly because there hasn't really been much else to cover. Now I'm getting to the much more notable cards. So the third category, I bunched together 2 groups, really. The group number 1 is cards that pump your creatures they pump it by the number of creatures in graveyards. Sometimes, it depends the exact phrasing. Sometimes it's the number of creatures in all graveyards, sometimes it's the number of creatures in target opponent's graveyard. It really depends, but the reason this is so effective and that I have so many cards that have it, I'm thinking probably 6, maybe even 7 cards that have that effect. Because of the reason for that is because as the toughness gets larger, I can mill more cards, which, when there are more cards milled, that means that there is a higher toughness. So I can tap it to mill more cards, and it just grows exponentially. So there's a lot of cards such as that. One is Bone Horde, which is 4 for an artifact equipment. Living Weapon. When it enters the battlefield, create a 0/0 germ and attach it to it. equipped creature gets +X, where X is the number of creature cards in all graveyards, and it has equip 2. You could equip it to something, but it works perfectly well to just have it on a germ. Next is Eater of the Dead, which is 4 and a black for a 3/4 summon Eater. 0. Take 1 creature from any graveyard and remove it from the game. Untap Eater of the Dead. So you can tap Eater of the Dead to mill 4 cards. Then you can remove a creature from any graveyard to untap it, and do that over and over and over again until you get unlucky and don't hit creatures. This can easily kill opponents. Plus, with all the other mill cards you have, you can mill your opponents. There's a lot of different ways this can work, and if you get this, you are likely to win the game. Plus, it's super janky and unplayable anywhere else. So, there are a lot of similar cards to Bone Horde and Curse of the Dead, but I'm just going to choose 1 more and skip, 2 more and skip over the rest. Undead Alchemist is 3 and a blue for a 4/2. If a zombie you control would deal combat damage to a player, instead that player puts that many cards from the top of his or her library into his or her graveyard. And whenever a creature card is put into an opponent's graveyard from his or her library, exile that card and put a 2/2 black zombie creature token on the battlefield. First of all, it's exiled, which is great. Second of all, you can tap Undead Alchemist, mill 2. Hopefully you hit a creature, makes a zombie. You can tap that zombie, mill 2. Hopefully it hits a creature, which makes another zombie. And you can keep on doing that. And the zombies stay in between turns, so it just adds up super quickly. And the final card with a similar effect that I'm going to cover, there are more cards with similar effects to these, but these are just the ones I'm covering because I don't want to be redundant. So it is the Haunt of Hightower, which is 4 black for a 3/3 flying lifelink. Whenever the Haunt of Hightower attacks, defending player discards a card. And whenever a card is put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, put a +1/+1 counter on the Haunt of Hightower. For people watching, the reason I just clicked over to the record tab is because I was checking how long, because the current program I'm using has a 30-minute cap per recording, so I have to stop in between. Speaking of new improvements that I'm going to make, that is a thing I will be fixing soon. I'm getting a new computer, so hopefully I will be able to have a lot of, not hopefully, I will be able to have a lot of better software solutions. For example, I will be editing with Audacity soon. There's just a lot of different things that will go better. I won't have to stop every half hour. There's a lot of different things that I can solve with a new computer, and it should be coming this week. I will probably have it ready for use next week, but we will see. Alright, so of the cards left, mostly they just say target opponent mills cards. A couple of them say they put half of their library into the graveyard. A couple of them say they throw a specific number, like in Startled Awake's case, which is 2 blue, they throw away 13. In Glimpse the Unthinkable, which is blue-black, they throw away 10. So in Jace Memory Adept, his 0 ability is they mill 10. So there are a couple different things that will do that, but they're fairly redundant. And then there's a couple that just replicate on the amount of cards already in your graveyard. For example, Fraying Sanity, 2 and a blue for a curse, and it has at the beginning of each end step, enchanted player puts the top X cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard, where X is the number of cards put into that graveyard from anywhere this turn. So basically this just doubles your mill, which can make it much easier to win. Keening Stone has a similar-ish effect. It's 6 for an artifact, 5, tap. Target player puts the top X cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard, where X is the number of cards in that player's graveyard. So, needless to say, this is quite powerful. With something that gets rid of half of your library and a couple other mill cards, you can just instantly get rid of an entire library. You only need to get slightly more than half. Well, you only need to get half of the library, or 50 cards. Slightly more is why I said it, because it's 99 cards into their graveyard in order to get them to mill their entire deck and lose next turn. So that is quite good, although it is very, very expensive. Of the rest of the cards, they are fairly redundant, very similar effects of the rest. I'd say Riddle Keeper is the outlier. 2 and a blue for a 1/4. Whenever a creature attacks you or a planeswalker you control, that creature's controller puts top 2 cards of their library into their graveyard. This makes it even less profitable to attack you. The reason that it wasn't profitable before is because you have so many giant toughness creatures that it's going to be hard to get through. One more card that I want to cover, which is actually in the wrong category, I'm going to fix that real quick, is Dusk Mantle Guildmage. Dusk Mantle Guildmage is blue-black for a 2/2. 1 blue-black. Whenever a card is put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere this turn, that player loses 1 life. And 2 blue-black. Target player puts the top 2 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. So, there's a lot of different reasons that this is good. The 2 blue-black ability is largely useless, but in certain scenarios it might be helpful. The 1 blue-black ability is the thing that is really good. So, baseline, you want to kill every opponent with mill. And doing that requires you to get rid of probably 80 cards per player. If you could just spend 3 mana and half that, plus you get help from your opponents dealing damage to each other, that is very good. The other thing is, if you're starting on a new opponent, you just killed 1 by milling them, then this helps you get there much faster and you didn't really lose any progress. So, it's pretty good. It's very helpful, but is not always used. Alright, so that is the Phenax mill deck. We have 23 islands and 14 swamps. It's pretty straightforward. I'm just trying to mill out my opponents with some big toughness creatures, getting some vanilla and some defenders, and just generally absolutely horrible creatures. And then I'm supplementing that with some cards that synergize really well with the deck, that get bigger or make more toughness that I can tap down to mill the more that I mill, so it's cumulative and gets me winning quickly. So that is that deck. I think if you were to play it, it would actually perform somewhat well. You probably wouldn't win your fair share because, first of all, it's mill, which is extremely hard to accomplish. Second of all, you have these super junky creatures, and while your opponents wouldn't necessarily target you too much, you also just wouldn't be able to do very much either. So, that is that deck. I'm going to move on to an Arcades Walls deck. So Arcades, the strategist, if you do not know, is 1 green, white, blue for a 3/5 flying vigilance. Whenever a creature with Defender enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card. And each creature you control with Defender assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power and can attack as though it had Defender. As though it didn't have Defender. So, that's really nice. Not sure why I just zoomed in a ton. This is better. So, basically, I'm just running a huge amount of walls. There's really nothing else to this deck other than walls, and I looked through them, and no. There's nothing in this deck other than walls. Basically, I just chose the cheapest walls, threw in some lands, and we have a deck. I don't really know what to cover. Walls or creatures with Defenders can't attack, but if you have, and usually have really high toughness and low power, they're just for blocking. And if you have Archidekt out, whenever you cast one, you draw a card, and they deal damage equal to their toughness, and they can attack. So it's just an aggro deck, and you throw down a lot of Defenders. This is just a way to get a ton of unplayable Defenders out of the way. I chose to go with the cheapest ones because they synergize the best with Archidekt. The cheaper it is, the more that draw card effect matters. And you can also synergize a small amount with the power and toughness effect, but that is a much more common effect, and I will likely make another deck with Doran as the commander that is also a wall deck, because apparently there's a lot of walls. I think I found 200 only in Bant, so I'm not sure how I'm going to use all of those. By walls, I also mean Defenders. I just use them both in the same meaning. But there's a lot of Defenders, and I'm not sure how I'm going to use them all. And I also don't remember for certain, but I think I used a Doran deck already. I'm not sure about that, but I think so. Yeah, I just checked 282 walls, and currently I used walls or creatures with Defender. Currently I used 63 in this deck, and I might have used some other ones, but currently that is that. There's not really very many notable cards here. We have Axebane Guardian, which is 2 and a green for a 0/3 Defender. Tap, add X mana and any combination of colors to your mana pool, where X is the number of creatures with Defender you control. Carven Caryatid, 1 green for 2/5 Defender. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card. We have Crashing Drawbridge, 2 for Defender, 0/4 tap. Creatures you control gain haste. We have we have others. Let me find one. Oh, here's one. Overgrown Battlement, 1 and a green for Defender, 0/4 tap. Add green to your mana pool for each creature with Defender you control. Shield Sphere, green, 0 for a 0/6 Defender. When it blocks, you put a -0, -1 counter on it. If it attacks, it doesn't even get those. There's others. There's Sylvan Caryatid, 1 and a green for a 0/3 Defender hexproof. Tap, add 1 mana of any color. There's Tree of Redemption, which is 3 and a green for a Defender, 0/13. Tap, exchange your life total with Tree of Redemption's toughness. So baseline, it's a 13/13. And it could be even higher if you're willing to trade your life total. 13 is rather low to go, but it could work. Other notable ones, Vine Trellis, 1 and a green for 0/4 Defender, tap, add green. Wall of Blossoms, 1 in a green defender, 0/4, an ETB draw card. Wall of Essence, 1 in a white, 0/4. Whenever it's dealt combat damage, you gain that much life. Wall of Omens, 1 and a white, ETB draw card, 0/4. Wall of Roots, 1 and a green, 0/5 defender. Put a -0, -1 counter on it. Add green to your mana pool. Activate this ability only once each turn. Other than that, I don't think there's much else, but you get the idea. It's just a bunch of defenders to beat face with. That is that deck. I'm running 12 forests, 12 islands, and 12 plains. Not sure why I didn't check that earlier. Oh, I must have actually, because the colors are very balanced. Wow, it's very nice. So that is that deck. It's got an insanely low average CMC of 1.98. Well, actually, I guess it's not insanely low. That's just low. So that you know you're just going to be casting out your walls. That's that deck. Next, we're going to get on to the collection statistics. So in the last couple of weeks, I haven't gone as deeply into the collection statistics as I would like. So, first of all, we have 1,692 cards, and of course, no overlap. Because for some reason, well, I guess it kind of makes sense. It has a total number, a total of unique printings, and a total of unique cards. They're all the same for me. Because no overlap. Alright, the estimated value on TCG Player is $1,764. The average number on, or the estimated value on Card Kingdom is $2,011, which if we calculate that, that's probably about $120, $130 per card, roughly, whereas the average overall is roughly $2.21 per card for all the cards in the history of Magic. So I am ahead on that, which is great. Monetary value is not a perfect measure, but it certainly works. In terms of color distribution, we have 301 green, 299 red, 187 black, 256 blue, and 229 white. I don't need to tell you that all those cards in reality are closely balanced. I don't remember the exact numbers, and they're not perfectly balanced, but they are close. So, as you can see, I've got a whole lot more green and red that I need to. 50 less blue, 70 less white, and 120 less black. So, I mean, I've been having these same issues. This week, I think it's a little bit better than before. Again, on colorless, we have roughly 300 of those. We should have roughly 2/3 the amount of colorless than we do of the other colors, which if we average it out, we probably have roughly 250 per color, meaning I should have roughly 175 colorless, meaning I have like 125 extra. So that's quite a lot. And in terms of multicolor, let me see if I have that data. I checked that data earlier. I'm sure I've got it somewhere. This is my document that I use for basically everything related to my podcast. I just write it all down there, and it's like 6 pages long. So I'm sure I've got it somewhere, but multicolor, I do need a little bit more, I think, because I've got 122. Okay. Oh, I do have it. Okay. 2.2K multicolor, so similar to artifacts, or similar to colorless is where it should be, meaning I should add like 80 multicolor and get rid of like, well, I guess like 50. So I'm not off on multicolor by too much. I'll have to make more of that. Okay. In terms of rarity distribution, we have 7.3 thousand commons, we have 6.6 thousand uncommons, 6.2 thousand rares, and 1,000 mythics. So that is on the entirety of Magic. So they're roughly all the same. They're pretty close. In terms of what we have in our distribution, we have 704 commons, 542 uncommons, 390 rares, and 56 mythics. So I'm sort of on track. I have more commons and more uncommons, more of the lower rarities, which is good. I'm going to see if I can find my type distribution percentages. I'm not sure. No, I cannot find those. I'm not sure if I deleted those or not. It seems like I did. But in terms of type distribution, we have 1,007 creatures, 163 sorceries, 239 artifacts, 66 lands, 10 planeswalkers it looks like, yeah. 168 enchantments, 4 tribal cards, and 143 instants. Again, I don't have the exact numbers pulled up right now, but I remember it being slightly more than half of cards were creatures, which is right around what I have. And then I don't remember, other than that my wheel was pretty accurate. So for now, it looks good. So it is time to get into card of the week. So the card of the week this week is Artifact Mutation. Artifact Mutation is red, green for an instant. Destroy target artifact. It can't be regenerated. You create X 1/1 green sapling creature tokens, where X is that artifact's converted mana cost. So I am analyzing this purely as a creature token creator, because analyzing what cards are removal worthy is very situation dependent and very opinionated. So I can't really speak for how good it is as a piece of removal. What I can say is how effective it is as a token producer. So, as I have created before this spreadsheet in which I calculated the average number of artifacts in each CMC in the average deck in the EDH Rec database. So, using that data, I calculated that the average number of artifacts with CMC 3 or more per deck on average is 5.78, with an average of 3.91 converted mana cost. So that's in comparison with 6.9 artifacts of CMC 0 or 1 or 2. So to break that down more specifically, that's an average of 2.2 CMC 3 artifacts, 2.1 CMC4 artifacts and CMC5 artifacts. There's also 0.3 CMC6 artifacts. So what does this really mean? If we use a hypergeometric distribution calculator, we can find out exactly how likely we are that an opponent gets one. So if we use that and we check the odds of any opponent drawing an artifact with CMC 3 or more that can be played on curve. So by that I mean, really, if it's turn 6, I'm not going to count a CMC 7 artifact, or if it's turn 4, I'm not going to count CMC 5 artifacts. And for artifacts that are on that turn, they would count because you can play them at instant speed even if the person is after you. You can play the instant or sorcery. So the odds of someone drawing something with CMC 3 or more on turn 6 is a 93% chance. We're talking about an average of 3.91, so basically 4 on turn 6, which turn 6 is rather late, but we're almost always going to get at least that much and sometimes even more. That is great. On turn 5, there's still an 87% chance. And on turn 4, we still have a 70% chance. So any of these times, even down to turn 4, it's a really quite efficient piece of token production. And as a removal spell, honestly, that's just a small benefit. And sometimes you will need to use this as removal, sometimes you won't. So I would say if you have a deck that is in red-green and you want to make tokens, this could definitely be worthwhile. But there are also a huge amount of playable cards in Magic, so you'll have to consider it. But I do think this is one of the better token producers, because usually the rate for making 1/1 tokens is 1 mana for 1 token. So in terms of that rate, it is quite good.